Swiss astronaut who went into space, and he had all this engineering training. And when he was interviewed after he went into orbit, he said that that moment of looking down on the Earth was one of complete wonder. He knew his stuff, he knew his skills, but he dropped all sense of being in his own head, computing and thinking, and he just stared at the Earth with a sense of wonder. And for me, hearing him share that story, they have a word for that for astronauts. It's called the overview effect. And for me, I experience this all the time in VR. And I know you can't cheer and shout, but just, raise your hand above your head if you've ever felt like that yourself. Like, wow, this is amazing. And I'm in my body, but I'm also out of my body at the same time. Yeah, that sense of wonder and connection is really something that VR has a possibility to build on in a way that I think is unique. And it's something that maybe in these beginning stages, sometimes we take for granted and we move on to the next stage. But if we think about in our bodies, what's happening with this wonderscape, a lot of that has to do with mindfulness and presence and just both being in yourself and losing yourself in this experience. So with that wonder idea, connection is my mission. Like, my mission is to empower connection for each individual, for each group. So mindfulness and social emotional learning, they happen all the time as a base layer in really great educational planning. So if we think about our education mission, to have learners deeply connected and to have ourselves deeply connected in this experience as we're building in VR is part of what makes it special, makes it meaningful, and makes learners feel like they're really there and part of the learning in an engaged way. So let's see. Question for you right now is just to think about what you do to reconnect. Because maybe even in this conference, you feel like it's jumping point to point to point. You might use VR to reconnect. This is an example today in the session of ways that you can use VR to reconnect. But what do you do right now? Just inviting you to think for a moment about a personal practice you have that you use when you need to reconnect. For me, one of my practices is running. I just love running, going out in the woods, picking a trail, running, feeling my heartbeat. Some people love cooking. Some people choose to meditate and have a formal meditation session. Other people might play with a dog or, take another pet out and go for a hike, something like that. I think that whatever we're doing, that is an aspect of mindfulness if we're intentional about it and it's increasing our awareness in the moment. If I ask people about a feeling of reconnection, they often tell me something that reminds me of this. Like, when they reconnect, they feel like they're expansive and they can breathe and their lungs are filled with clear air. And if I ask them about disconnection, they often tell me something that makes me think of this image, that people, we're going so fast now, and that's the world we've created, a pace that's almost beyond our intentions, and we have to catch up. I was a full-time teacher for over 10 years in middle school and high school, and I would often ask my students, how do you feel in the middle of this world? And they said sometimes they feel really disconnected and they're trying to catch up and trying to have experiences socially online as a way to authenticate their experience. So I was asking them, okay, if we didn't capture it, if we don't take pictures, if we don't post constantly, did it actually happen? And if you don't smile in them, were you having fun? And this is a bigger topic. We could have a talk for, a day about this in social media. I think that VR is actually not a medium. It's an experience that can bring people back to themselves. So when I hear about digital innovation and about people using different media and feeling oversaturated and overwhelmed, I feel like VR has the capacity, both in education and in our personal life, to bring us back closer to ourselves. And I think it's interesting to really step back and look at how we're using different forms of technology and how we're approaching ourselves in the process, because this is happening right now, and students are telling me it's really important to them not to feel forced, not to feel that they have to use connection in a way that's false on these forms of media, because it starts to then feel like an impulse instead of a choice. So one of my missions with education is to design for mindful connection. And that's where mindfulness and social emotional learning comes in. Yeah, so really to think about the brain and think about some of the recent findings we have in neuroscience that back up what I think as educators we've always known intuitively, that we connect more deeply when we slow down, when we feel present in an experience, and when we're free to create and explore and wonder. Because that bottom line of creativity and innovation tends to come from that type of mindset. So it's really the creative mindset that's at the end of this process, which is all about inviting mindfulness. So this session today, I wanted to just introduce you to some of the ideas of mindfulness, and then go from there and have an experience ourselves, just a mini experience. And for me, this is really learning 2.0. It's taking the advantage of all these findings and then putting it into practice in a way that is our own. And I say that to each of you in the room because your classroom is your group. And I'm not going to say to Steve Bowie, this is the way that you have to design your classroom. I wrote a book and I called it Mindful by Design, because each of us is a designer and each of our students is a designer. You're a designer of the experience that you want to have. And of course, you can seek out my stories, seek out Bill's, talk to David, find out what works for him, and then you pick and choose and create your own wonder space in your classroom where students are involved and empowered. Okay, this is a lot of text, but I would say for me, it's important to have it all up there, because when I was at the VHIL, the Virtual Human Interaction Lab at Stanford, I was really thinking about, okay, what is VR doing that's different? And why am I feeling this presence in such a visceral way that makes me want to create learning worlds that incorporate VR, and leadership worlds and new spaces for mindfulness? I think, looking at this slide, it goes beyond the words. These new rules of identity and space are something we feel. We don't have to conceptualize them. I say we don't learn from the neck up, we learn with our whole body. And in VR, it makes so much more possible as we play with those ideas and think about them. So it's no doubt, if you're in this room or if you're watching the live feed or if you're in AltSpace, you chose to be there for a reason. For me, it has something to do with these words, this new empathy enhancement, the way that we connect with each other that can be deeper and even more meaningful than what's existed in the past. And that's amazing. Don't underestimate it. And new research is coming out every day that really backs up these ideas of using VR for mindfulness, for connection, and for empathy. So I've been overseas. I was living in Belgium, living in Switzerland. I've been teaching and working all over the world. And a lot of people will say, well, what is this word mindfulness? They're familiar with it, but might not have had a concrete definition for it. So my definition uses 3 A's. And today I just wanted to explore those 3 A's and use this space as a chance to connect. Okay, so right now, wherever you are in the room, as I break down the 3 A's, I just want to go back to that question I asked at the beginning, what you use to reconnect in your life when you feel a sense of disconnection. And just think about the three A's as an ah, like, ah, I'm feeling a sense of wonder, or ah, I'm feeling more relaxed. The first A stands for awareness. So as you're sitting in this room and we're experiencing awareness, it means with all of our senses. So with your sight, with your sense of smell, touch, sound, you're dropping in on that. And mindfulness encompasses awareness because it means you're physically aware and you're also taking notice of your internal landscape. So what's happening in your mind, and it could be a curious awareness. Like right now, maybe you notice something happening that's a little different in the room. Yeah. And I'm smiling because I'm seeing it right now all around me. And intentionally the symbol here is water for awareness, because water is one of those elements that has a changing condition, right? It can be hot or cold. Sometimes there are waves and we have to ride them, right? And with mindfulness, as you're approaching that and thinking symbolically of the water, realize that it's up to you to be aware and to invite yourself to both appreciate the moment, and it's not always sunny and happy. Like sometimes the waves feel like a storm, right? To be aware of that using qualities of mindfulness means that you kind of start watching yourself in each moment. Like right now, you might be sitting in the front row thinking, why did I listen to Caitlin and sit in the front row? It's the splash zone. I'm getting wet, and you're kind of having this mini levity conversation where you can actually laugh at that. You can zoom out of yourself as if you're at the end of a movie and kind of watch yourself watching the water. You can think about how much you appreciate being able to be here in VR, and you can start looking at your hands, your virtual hands in VR, and start playing with the water. And all of those simple kind of childlike exercises are part of mindfulness because it really takes us back to that state of just looking and not assessing. Yeah, and for learners, that's really key because you can approach any topic and invite a quality of awareness. And suddenly, it's not about proving what I set out to prove. It's about investigating the different angles that might be possible in a very simple experience. Yeah, so being aware, and people like John Kabat-Zinn, who developed mindfulness-based stress reduction programs, they'll say that awareness is on purpose. Like you don't just happen to be aware because your body happens to sense things. You're intentionally inviting that awareness. And what better place than VR to invite curiosity and say, let's drop in on this moment. Let's be aware. Okay, so, oh my gosh, I just turned around. Oh. So first you're aware, and then the second A stands for advancing. Yeah, so the symbol for advancing is a tree today, just as a hook. This is like a memory palace. So I'm giving you anti-slides, like slides that are 3D objects. So the tree stands for advancing because it's not, I say the word advancing and some people think, oh, I mean standards and checking boxes and jumping through hoops. No, I mean like a tree, you're grounded. So each learner has their ground. They feel support, like a tree feels support in its roots, right? But it's lifting up. It's got an impulse. Like a tree has the gravity and the levity. So that advancement stands for being able to see past some limiting beliefs. Maybe there are stories that we're carrying as learners or as leaders that are limiting us from our potentials. The tree wants to stretch toward the sun, so it's reaching its branches up, its leaves, and it's adapting. It's adapting to the conditions of its environment, and at each step, I think there's a great kind of Greek play that talks about this quality of the tree to be flexible, right? Like when the wind comes, the strong trees are not actually the ones that are brittle and tied in their places, but they're flexible in the wind, and they have this ability for their branches to move and to stretch and to grow in a way that's really flexible and fluid. So as we think about the tree and for ourselves being like the tree, that quality of advancing is really about leaning into opportunities that come up in the moment, right? If we have a space for ourselves, and mindfulness helps give us that capacity, then we're able to not only adapt, but seek out the qualities, like seek out the sunlight that is good for us, and really, really fits what we're promoting and working toward in our sense of purpose. So that really is the moment of tree and growth. And the third A stands for authenticity. So this is the hardest part. If you think about mindfulness and non-judgment, authenticity. Oh, as I look over, there's fire. Yeah. So the theme here with authenticity is the candle, right? And the candle and the light that travels. Right? We don't exist alone. We exist in a community, and an authentic community and authentic individuals are ones that share their fire, like share their light with others, seek support and strength from others. Resilience doesn't happen in an individual way. It happens in a way where there are different ups and downs, and the social environment can help and really support each other in a way that involves vulnerability as well. And for leaders and learners, that's a lesson that's sometimes really hard in education. Alvin Grayland talked about this last night, about how the impulse is to perform and to really promote ourselves on an individual level. That was the archaic old style of learning 1.0. But as we move to 2.0, really this idea of relational trust, that people trust us more when we say, hey, I don't have all the answers. I have to seek that light from elsewhere in my community. Oh, we have something new here in the school. I don't know everything about it. And you get your learners involved, becoming some of the experts who are going to help lead others. I think it's really empowering as a leader to acknowledge that we don't know everything, thank goodness. And part of that authentic connection with mindfulness, can't even see the slide, it's really funny, it's appropriate. With mindfulness, part of that third A of authenticity is knowing that not only is that okay, but that's expected. It makes you stronger and more capable as a leader and a lifelong learner when you're authentic and people see, oh yeah, you're not pretending to have all the answers and score perfect on every test, but you know how to seek out others, and you know how to thrive and exist in a moment. And I like to say authenticity also is about having humor and being able to step back and just laugh at the moments that happen. I know all of them are not funny, but a lot of them, if we're not fixed too tightly on outcomes, we start to see that discovery happens when there's that type of flow. So practices in mindfulness can add to all of these elements being part of our lives. And I put that out there intentionally, just as water, tree, candle, so that you can take those ideas away. And when you're thinking, oh, what is mindfulness? How do I use it? That's really the digging down to elements that remind you of how to incorporate each of those in an interesting way. And I've come up with exercises that work for me. I'm happy to share them because I've led them with groups all over the world, some in learning spaces, some in leadership spaces, people of all ages. We're lifelong learners. So really, this is a conference getting together to talk about how we both unlearn strategies from the past that didn't work so well and embrace some of these new learning strategies that work really well with the wonder technology of VR. Yeah, so I wanted to also, with the 3 elements, just give us one exercise, kind of hands on, lungs on. I love it. I'm having so much fun right now. I'm grinning ear to ear if my avatar doesn't show it. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so one exercise that you can do right now with me, we're gonna do it together, one of the first times, so just take it as it goes. But for me, so okay, if this is a jewel, it's a gem in front of us, and it's gonna guide us in a breathing exercise. For me, the way that I ground and get back to self, like let's say that you're waiting for a long time in an office and you're just kind of stressed out from the waiting. Maybe you cannot import water and tree and fire. You can have them in your mind, but here's just a simple breathing exercise that you can do for yourself, because reset your system, just get you back feeling in flow, feeling connected. So with me, I'm just going to lead 3 breaths. So the first thing I would invite is just for wherever you are, whether you're sitting, the ideal would be to sit, for this exercise, but you could be standing. Just put yourself at the edge of the seat. This is where the tweet comes in, Stephen, from yesterday. You're going to be on the edge of your seat. So put yourself at the edge of your seat so you feel like you're not falling asleep. Like, the idea for some breathing and mindfulness is to invite your body into a state of dignity. You respect it, you love it, and you're inviting yourself to be present, be aware, but be comfortable, like not forced. Okay, so with me, now that you're relaxed and you've rolled your shoulders back and you feel like you're good to go in your seat, okay, just going to invite you to take a deep breath in. It could be in through your nose or out through your mouth. So in, and you can visualize this gem expanding as you breathe in. And then you feel the breath full in your lungs and you let it exhale really slowly. Just exhale completely, letting go of anything. Then you feel that emptiness in your lungs and you can turn and inhale a second time. And as you inhale a second time, just feel the word possibility, right? And as you exhale, let go of anything that's negativity. Yep, just feel it lift off of you. You exhale completely. And then a third breath in. You can let a slight smile come across your face. And then exhale and just let anything go that you feel you might be holding on to as you exhale. Yeah. And when you don't have a virtual diamond to be your gemstone, you can be in a classroom and use your hands to do a breathing space exercise with students, just 3 breaths. You can use an expansion ball. They have these balls that expand that you can use to represent your lungs. I don't know about you, but just 3 breaths. I mean, just raise your hand if you feel a little more relaxed right now than when you entered the session. Maybe right now than before. Use yourself as a testing ground. I don't know, so I don't claim authority over your body and your experience, but I know that mindfulness and social emotional aspects invite me to use myself as a testing ground. So I'm constantly stepping back saying, how does that feel? And if it feels good, I'll use it and I'll keep using it. If it doesn't, I cast it away and I look for another exercise that works for me and works for my group. Social emotional learning is really tied to mindfulness because it takes the context of presence and being there and respecting ourselves and holding dignity for each other, and then applies it socially to social groups, social learning groups. So all of these SEL practices are tied in with a base level, I think, of mindful awareness. They complement each other. Uh, wow. There's a bird. I love it. So now we're going to kind of, let's see. I'm going to play around a little bit, seeing if I move forward, I can just talk about this. Yeah, we don't even need, let's keep all the elements. I love them. The theme of VR is connection inside and out. That's what that says there. And Michio Kaku, who's a neuroscientist, he said, wow, there are 1 billion stars in the Milky Way galaxy. They're roughly the same as the number of neurons in our brain. Yeah, so pretty amazing that we have the same number of neurons in our brain as stars in the Milky Way galaxy. Studies recently have been showing that, of course, there's higher rates of burnout, higher rates of stress and anxiety. Articles that come out in research papers strongly reinforce that mindfulness practices relate to stress reduction, an ability to overcome setbacks, obstacles, all kinds of things that are in our way. So it's like this superpower that you're able to carry with you. And it's like swimming in a large lake as opposed to feeling like our body is trapped in a tiny cup. So what's happening in your brain, and I can share slides later, but it's really more important to just think about it and conceptualize. Aha, thank you very much. Thank you, Chris Madsen. So what's happening is when we feel a sense of a threat come in, the brain is naturally it's not hardwired, it's softwired, it's bio. We have a reaction in our limbic system that says, threat, we've got to react right away and get ourselves to a safe place. What mindfulness does is it brings up our regulatory processes. Like, it actually enhances our ability to take those threats and say, okay, in this moment, is this actually a threat, or is this something I'm perceiving? And can I use the mindfulness practice to really connect with myself and basically disempower that sense of being threatened. So it turns some fear into curiosity. It can turn our reactive system into more of a response system, so we're able to respond to what's happening in the moment. They say for educators, having a mindfulness practice, students will recognize it even if you don't say, hey, I'm practicing mindfulness. Like, students will just say, oh wow, I feel that sense of capacity. Like, I feel welcome in this room. I feel like, when things happen, my teacher is more able to respond to me and make me feel connected on a personal level. So right now, we've been, Chris Madsen and I have been doing group sessions together with educators, with leaders inside of VR, giving people a chance to learn about mindfulness and practice together as a group. And results have been great. And I will leave it up to others, take their word for it and not mine. When people come in together to a space where they're invited to be themselves, be comfortable, learn about mindfulness practices, there's so many of them, and also learn about ways you can take them back to your groups. And as you're in this space, now that we've let our senses kind of quiet, along with me, I'm inviting you to just take 3 mindful breaths in and out. So I'll lead us as we inhale. Just let the air fill your lungs. And as you exhale, try to roll your shoulders just a little bit down and feel more relaxation. And at the second inhale, let the air fill your lungs and feel a greater sense of ease. As you exhale, let everything completely go that might be hanging on or making you feel stressed. With the third inhale, you're invited, if you want to raise your arms above your head and stretch. And then with the exhale, just keep the word ease in your mind. Just a gentle ease. Invite yourself in this moment just to appreciate. Appreciation is another word for seeing. And as you look around, maybe give special attention to one thing that will be your extraordinary element. Just something in the scene that captures your sense of wonder, your sense of delight. Could be very simple, but just imagine it as if we dropped off of an alien spaceship and we're here together and we can't explain it. We don't know what it is, but we can be aware of it.